And what you do is, the polypropylene melts at 364 degrees. We want about 600 degrees coming out of your end of your tip here. And how you tell that it's ready to weld, you hold it in there and it starts getting tacky, you know you've got the heat. Now, so I'm going to heat this at a 45, and once that gets started, see that puddle on this side, guys, on my right, and you see that forming. So I'm going to keep the heat at a 45 on the rod in the plastic.
Now, are you dragging that, or are you feeding it down?
I'm pushing it down.
Pushing it down into it.
Okay. Yeah. You want a downward pressure as you're.
So you're just kind of turning that into a ribbon.
Correct. And as you can see, what I'm trying to do is I'm pushing that rod into the plastic of the bumper. Okay. So we have to thrust it in. Now, notice how that was smoking?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not burning. The plastic isn't burning pure. Then I put nitrogen to it, see how it quit smoking? Now the plastic is melting pure. And this is what the nitrogen does versus hot air. What we're going to do here is iron the edges in on this seam. And we're using the nitrogen, again, blowing onto it so we get a pure weld. And this is kind of feathers in the edges where we make sure they're laying in there good. Okay. I may run out of rod here, but I guess we'll go ahead and start on this one. Again, you can see that puddle coming up. Now they have different colors of rod. They have black or white. You notice I have safety reading glasses on. The white against the black is easier for me to see. You younger guys probably don't have that problem. Now you notice how close my finger is to this. Believe it or not, we have this set to where at 600 degrees you weld fast enough that the plastic is barely getting warm on the back side. If we had it set at a low temperature, we would have to spend so much time heating up the plastic it would cause warpage. By doing it at this speed, we're not warping the plastic on the other side. And you should be able to weld about 6 inches per minute once you get proficient. You can also use the back of your iron to melt that off. Now, when there's liquid like this, you can see how the plastic is kind of looking like goo. At this point, a 3-year-old could pull this bumper apart, or that repair apart. So, before you do anything with this, you need to let it set and completely cool as far as, you know, moving it or trying to bend on it or do anything structural with it until the plastic has had a chance to cool off and set. Now on the back side, it's not all that important as to how smooth you make it, but you know, if you're like anything else, take pride in your work and try to make it look nice. You never know who might see it later on down the road. So when you get through, we just turn the nitrogen back off, so that way we run the straight air through our
Now, can you cool it with the air, or do you just want to let it cool naturally?
At this point, you want to let it cool naturally and not use compressor air, because then you can blow impurities into it while it's still liquid. Now, once it hardens, forms over, or glazes over, and that liquid disappears, you can speed it up by using regular compressor air. But at this point, we're going to let that set. I guess we can go ahead and flip it over and let me do the back side of this, so that way here in a little bit we'll pass this around and let y'all rip on it and test it.
Now, did you do any sort of V-notching or anything like that?
Not on this particular application. Now, sometimes, like if this was busted off on the area where you can V-notch that. It just kind of depends on the application. What we're doing here with the die grinder, we're taking off about, like I said, about as wide as your rod that you're going to use and about as thick as the rod you're going to use. Now on the back side, you sometimes use a wider rod than what you would on the front So probably on this front one, we'll run this size of ribbon down the front, and we won't do the T-lock on the front edge. We just normally do that on the back for strength. And glasses on here again. Everybody ready? Now, you can actually even weld a curve on this. Yesterday we had a demonstration where a guy had cut out a door panel and he's putting a speaker, where a speaker went in there. Of course, it was on a curve. And you can flex your rod and even go and make it do curves and bends. Once you practice with this, you can do, you're amazed what you can do with it. And I'll let this cool a bit, and then after it gets through cooling, we'll take our DA down here with 80 grit cutting her. That's our first weld there. While that's cooling, we're going to move on to a couple of little problem areas that you also see into a body shop. And Clint, being out in the field, has ran into this. Lots of times bumpers, the only thing that's wrong is these tabs are broke off, and they have to snap in and lock. So if you use a two-part repair glue, which I'm sure you've probably seen all of these, Fuzer, there's different ones out there. By the time you put the repair material on there, it's too thick to snap in, and then you sand it down to make it thin enough, then you don't have any material left on there. So, like I said, most of these are broke right in the middle, like so. You know, they barely get bumped and it snaps them. Well, we're not going to run a bead right here in the middle because that's the weakest point in this whole thing. So come in here, and what you do is go ahead and cut the tab completely off all the way to the outside edge. And what this is going to do is this will give us 2 points of strength, divide our weakness into 2 points instead of just 1 point. And this is a very expensive tool that you pick up from Starbucks. If you're a coffee drinker, it's called a stir stick. You can wrap it with your aluminum tape. Aluminum tape just keeps the bead from sticking. And Leon worked with the factory long enough that he finally got them to make a ribbon that was 1/4 inch wide that is about the same width as what your bead is here. Before you had to take this wide ribbon and cut it in half. And so what we're going to do is put this up here as our backing plate. Use our little alligator clips here. And all this does is gives us a form to hold it onto while we weld. Now, we're going to take our little Dremlin here. At this point, we don't want to grind half away, but we want to grind a little bit of the material away, so then we lay our bead in there. We've got some welding rod left with the repair. And this is a little bit different. We weld, and I've only done this once. But the difference is, as you come across this open span, there's not anything there. And let me show you how to how we handle that. Okay, I get to the edge there. I'm going to back the heat off a little bit so it doesn't melt the rod in half. And then come back over to the other side. Go ahead and put the heat back to it. I got my little clip there a little bit closer. And now, notice that's not a real smooth, it's kind of not even, it's sagging and everything else, but we'll take care of that. So what we're going to do is heat this back up. And this is a handy dandy little pliers that comes in the kit. Warm that back up again. Just kind of squeeze that down to give it some form. Notice how that kind of made it more even across the top. Of course, we're not done yet, but we're done with this part. So now we're going to take and flip this over. Come back, and that's hot. And we'll run our bead. And now on this one, we got something across there to lay our other rod on top of, so it's a little bit easier to do. But again, I need to grind a little bit off here. Let me tell you something. My wife works with knives in a boot shop. If you get ready to drop a knife or a hot iron, don't try to grab it. Just let it fall and jump back, because that's hot. You might break an element, but boy, I hate to see somebody burn their hand. That starts to melt. That's right in there.
Now, is that enough heat to fuse those two pieces of ribbon together?
Yeah, you could see from over there, but I came across there. I actually welded this ribbon on top of the other ribbon as I came across. Okay, so now as you can see, we got a, let me shut this over here. We got it repaired across. Of course, it's not shaped. The hose doesn't match yet, but we can take care of that. You can do this a couple different ways. They have a file system that you can take, little files you can buy at Harbor Freight or whatever, get in there and file that out. Another thing you can do is use a Dremel tool that has a cutter bit on it. There's one in here that's like that, or another small one here. This one would probably work better. That application there, you can go in there in that hole and clean it out. Now, another way you can do that is you can actually use your hot iron, but if you notice, it's wider than what our hoe is. But Leon, the brilliant guy he is, he took a grinder and grinded his down where it's thin enough where you can slide that in here and kind of shape this and get it close to where you need it to. And then you can come back and finish it. Of course, I did a horrible job there, but you can square it up.
Yeah, that's right there. It's quick.
And do it that way. Okay. And one thing about this, the rod that we're using is you can take your grinder, which I didn't do this. You need to make it the same thickness so it'll pop into the clip. So you can take your sander here, sand it down. And what I've noticed, and Leon, after observing him the last couple of days, is I know a lot of you guys probably have a roll-lock disc, grinding disc, 3-inch deals, and you can use that. But this little thing seems a little bit easier to control. It doesn't go as fast. You can change the speeds, but you know, you can do whatever you're comfortable with. but you can sand that down and you can feel that this has the same flexibility as the original tab. Now, I obviously don't have it worked all the way down to where it would fit.
It's just a flap wheel.
That's just a flap wheel. I went to Lowe's. They actually got these on sale right now for 99 bucks, and I bought a couple to put in my demo kit. But the point I was going to make is that this is polypropylene, which is the same material that the bumper's made out of. So, like I said, if you tried to use a 2-part glue, that tab would have been hard, but by the time you sanded it away and make it the right thickness, you wouldn't have enough left. But since it was hard, it wouldn't flex. You go to snap it in, last time it's going to break right off again. Exactly. So that's another application. Now, another thing, I don't know if your guys have seen this yet or not, but some of the Cobalt GM bumpers have got these tabs on the back of the bumpers. They stick out of the bumper, and then it's like a hinge. You know what I'm talking about, Clint? But GM isn't the only one. Ford has them. Some of the other cars are using them too. Well, this is a way to make your own, and it's a whole lot better than a factory. And what you do is you get the tab that's broke off. If it's laying, sometimes you order a new bumper and the tab is broke before you even get it there.
Right.
But if the tab is gone, you can go over to the one that's there, lay it there, trace it out. You know how big the tab is, and make the circle there. But what we want to do is go a little bit wider than the original tab. Come out here, and here's your original tab. And we're going to come out just a little bit wider than that. And come over here, and let's say this is where it went onto your bumper. Well, you can see this is where the original tab was. Come about a ½ inch, a little bit wider. Notch that out. Okay. Cut that out. And what you do is just like we did here. You know how I cut that tab completely off? So just cut that out. Notch this where it needs to be laid in there, run you a bead on one side, flip it over, run you a bead on the back side. And then you have a tab that is actually better and stronger than the factory. But what you want to do is make your hinge first before you weld it. This is a material that Urethane Supply sells. You bend it. Some of the thicker material you have to put in a vise. This depends how thick your tab is. Normally the thinner tab will cover all your needs, but once you bend this a few times, and this will bend 100 times before it breaks, while the factory tabs, you bend it once or twice, it's already gone. So you see, you've already solved the problem that lots of times that's all that's wrong with a bumper, is just that tab is broke off. So you can save a several $100 bumper on a 10-minute repair. Okay. Now, I think we can come back to this. This is pretty well cooled down enough that let me kind of just feather this one edge, and then we'll pass that around and let y'all look at it. I think I got it here, right here. Now, don't make fun of our high dollar.
I was starting to say, how long you been harboring that thing?
This is what, a Harbor Freight special?
Yeah.
Show you how on each edge on that, how well that has feathered in. Pass that around. Now, you can take, if you bend it like a piece of wire and keep bending it and flexing it, you can eventually break it. But you can take it like a telephone book, go ahead guys, and just try to rip it. And that thing, it's there.
Well, the thing about it is once you get it on the car, it's not going to be doing that
right.
motion
If it bends that way again, the car's in a wreck.
Yeah, and that's what that T-bar part is for, is to give it strength on that edge.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you can flex that about 30%, and it's still, well, we've even had guys flexing more than that yesterday, but they actually have a filler I didn't know about till Leon was telling me Urethane Supply has a filler that will bend 30%. Right. Instead of using like a 416 or a metal glaze or something like that, they have a special.
You can pull on it really hard if you want to, it ain't gonna break.
I started to say, James, he's already put a test on it pretty good.
But like I said, this is some of the basic welds that I showed you. Of course, there's a lot of other things you can do with it. You can do headlight tabs, washer bottles, there's different things like that. But to get started with, it's best to practice on a flat surface, get proficient with how fast to run the bead. Because what everybody wants to do is start out with a big old flopping bumper that's going every which way, and that's just a nightmare to start your first weld with. But who wants to try a weld? Well, I think we got time to let a couple of